recipes, and I never eat processed food. Even as a kid, I wasn't allowed to eat processed food.
Oh. I think you're making good choices right now.
I think so. Oh, I bought a different passion planner.
Oh.
I bought the compact one because I want to put it in my purse.
Ooh. I can't wait to see the compact one and what it looks like.
Yeah, I think it's the same, but it's only as tall as the big one is.
So everything's just teeny tiny, or do they rearrange the pages?
Oh. I don't know. We'll have to find out. It shipped yesterday.
So what we're doing now is making some tomato soup. Yesterday I experimented with a tomato soup recipe and it was so good, and for the rest of my life it will be my tomato soup recipe. And it's so easy to make, so now I'm going to make some more and have it in the freezer for when it actually starts to get cold, because it's still super hot outside, but it's so fun to make and it tastes so delicious. And what I like is that it's a tomato soup without any dairy, so you don't put any milk or cream or cheese or anything, it's just tomato soup. And it is super yummy. So that's what we will be doing right now.
It's
as
amazing.
we continue. So I washed the tomatoes, and first I'm going to roast the vegetables. So you roast the tomatoes, the garlic, and the onion in the oven at 425, I think, for, well, the recipe says for 35 to 45 minutes, but that's for a whole lot of tomatoes and onions, like a really big serving, and I've cut it down to make it smaller, and it still works really well. So I'm just doing 2 large tomatoes, a handful of little cherry tomatoes, maybe a quarter of an onion, and then 3 cloves of garlic. And I'll roast that with olive oil and salt and pepper on 425. Last time I think it was like maybe 20 minutes, but basically whenever it starts to burn, pull it out. Like it turns golden, it's good. And then I will put that in with some chicken broth. It's frozen right now, but last time I just thawed it in the microwave and it was fine, so I'll do that. And then I will put in some dried basil. I'm always afraid I'll say that wrong. But basil is the name, and basil is the herb, right? I think. And then a little more salt and pepper. Yeah. And then I'll put it in the blender, because I like to blend it up, so it's and it made it the perfect consistency last time. So yeah.
Tomato soup!
This is how I cut down the recipe, and I will link to the real recipe below. So I've got the oven preheating to 425. I've washed the tomatoes, so now I'm going to cut the tomatoes in half and then get out some cherry tomatoes and wash those. Then you just put the whole peeled clove of garlic onto the sheet and then slice onion into like 1/4-inch thick slices, and that's all you do. Then you drizzle with olive oil and salt and pepper. And I like to make sure that it sort of cooks so that everything gets nice, you know. Whoops, I probably just poured some onto the eye.
In case you can't hear her, she is currently coating the cookie sheet, which I think is a lovely, I don't know if you saw the back and forth, but that was, I learned something there.
I'm also cutting out the little yucky part because I didn't do that last time, you know, the top of the tomato.
So, she is currently cutting out, she has cut out the tops of the tomatoes, and now she's slicing them in half in order to put them on the roasting pan.
Because, you know, you don't want this yucky part in your soup. Or at least I don't.
Can you show how you cut that out? Because
I
don't
kind
know
of did
how to.
this. And you have to be careful. And it's easier when it's on a cutting board, but I'm holding it in my hand, so.
Don't hurt yourself.
No, I'm fine. And I just kind of cut out this part and then lift it out. Like that.
That's so cool. I never knew that.
And you're supposed to put the cut side up. So, since you do that, I just put the biggest cut side up. Like this.
That's cool.
Yummy.
Aww.
Let's see, and this time I'm going to do 3 tomatoes. Make a little bit more, because last time I just did 2, and it was perfect for exactly 3 servings. So now I'll make enough to have a little bit in the fridge, but then save most of it in the freezer. See, I did buy a yellow onion, but I think I'm going to use the one that I have left over, because it's still fresh, and I don't want it to go bad. So that will be next. And I think I'll just fit it all in between the big tomatoes.
Oh, that's nice, because the tomato juices will get in between the onions.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to try sprinkling, you know, in between here. And then those will roast. The original recipe calls for the onions to roast a little bit less than the tomatoes, but last time I just took the cookie sheet out and took the onions off and put them in the pot and then let the tomatoes go 10 minutes longer. Because, you know, you can't see my sink right now, and that's on purpose, believe me, but I don't like to have to use many dishes because then I have to do dishes.
That's so funny.
Mm-hmm. cherry tomatoes. And I already washed these earlier, so now I'm just gonna put them here and let them also get into all the good olive oil goodness. And then I'll give it a good salt and peppering. And then I'll put it in at 425 and just sort of keep an eye on it. And when it all starts to turn golden and before it starts to turn burned, I'll pull it out. So, big clove of garlic. All I'm going to do is break off maybe, since I did that many tomatoes and that much onion, I'll do like 4 big cloves of garlic. Because last time I did 1 big one and 2 small ones. I'll just pull out my big soup pot. I think I'll use the big one today.
Adorable.
So I've got my big soup pot on the stove, and I will wait for all of this to get nice and golden, but not burned. Then all I do is take it out and dump it into the pot and put in, last time for the amount of soup I made, I put in about a cup of broth. So I'll do maybe a couple little extra of broth this time, and then sprinkle of basil, right? And then a little salt and pepper, bring it to a boil, simmer for 20 minutes, and then put it in the blender, and then you've got soup. So,
Super cool.
let's see. Okay, so I have pulled out the onions and tomatoes and garlic, and now I'm going to take out the little pieces because they cook faster, and then I'm just going to slide the big tomatoes back in for maybe 5 more minutes. Remember, this is not fancy cooking. This is college girl cooking. Let's turn on the tomatoes. Ooh, I think they're looking pretty good. You're supposed to do it until they turn golden, but I don't know how red tomatoes turn golden, so. But sometimes you can see how they sort of like get a little bit goldy. So then you just take them off and put them in here. And I just like to, they're really hot, so I just lift them up like this. The blog suggested peeling the skin off, but it seems like a lot of work. And when you blend it up anyway. Raynard is sending some Facebook messages. Oh, he's going to have some Ben & Jerry's ice cream.
What time is it?
Let's see. What time is it? 7 hours later than here.
4:30.
It works out though because he goes to bed late and I go to bed early.
So it's almost midnight.
He goes to bed at midnight.
What time does he wake up?
He only needs like 7 hours of sleep, he says.
Gross.
I know. Okay, now I'm gonna turn it on. Let it get nice and hot. And bubbly.
Bubbly.
I'm a very messy cook.
I feel like you've become such a real cook. I'm so impressed by you.
Now it's gotten like a lot easier. Just
All on your own.
Because I've always tried to cook, but it's hard.
It is hard. It takes so much intuition and artistry, but you already have all of those things.
I'm really enjoying I know this is not what I should be reading right now, but whatever. The things I'm reading on women's artwork and the patriarchal divide between art and craft.
Ooh.
And it's just so interesting because, I mean, I've always been very into epistolary, but not in the same way I'm into crafting. Even I call it crafting, you know, and it's just like, that means something to me. Like, and the things that I do in my everyday life, and the way I used to feel embarrassed that I liked to do these old-fashioned things, it's interesting. And so talking with Anya and having her, like, talk about how it's not just the finished product, and it's not just the process, but it's something about when you're making the thing, and, you know, you'll have it later and you'll be like, I made that, but also it's not about the finished product, it's about the process and how you feel when you do it. It's going to get it to boil, and then we're going to simmer it for 20 minutes. It's going to be super yummy. Then I'll have to actually do some dishes and pull out the blender, and then we'll blend it, and then we will have it ready to freeze some, and then maybe I'll put 1 serving in the fridge for me. Okay, it's boiling away, so now I'm going to let it cool down and simmer for a good 20 minutes.